all things in moderation was probably one of the best pieces of advice I ever received. However, this past week, I faced a free buffet, 4 days of free food from the best chefs. Welcome to Weiser Wednesday, episode 3. During the last 2 weeks, I took my own advice and spent a lot of time learning and investing in myself. Close to 20 hours of seminars. 2 of these were summits. One was about leading in times of unprecedented change, and the other was about foresight. It was actually an entire summit on foresight and thinking about the future. Now, I've done a lot of learning. Now, I've taken a lot of notes that I need time to process, to integrate, and build this into my toolkit. But there are 3 themes that I think came out from all of these sessions. And in my language, it's about seeing differently, thinking differently, and doing differently. So let's focus first on seeing and thinking today. And then tomorrow, in a special Thursday edition of Weiser Wednesday, we'll talk about doing differently and what that means for you. So this really applies to both leaders and their organizations. Seeing differently is about seeing around corners, about seeing things sooner, about looking more broadly, looking at signals that might be further back, that might be around you, that you normally would not have picked up on, but now you've got a heightened sensitivity to. It's about looking into the future and looking with some foresight about what could possibly happen. If we think about things with the pandemic, we're thinking about things we never would have imagined before. And these are the same types of things we should be thinking about in our business and having foresight into the future. So if you think about different examples, a lot of people didn't see the effect that Amazon was going to have on retail, or Instacart, in thinking about the potential business they had when there were issues like this. And the same thing with the coronavirus. There were signals. The second thing is about thinking differently. During a lot of the presentations, it was a lot of discussion about, is this about bad luck or about bad preparation? And that applies to many, many types of disruptions, not just the one we're having now. So when you think about thinking differently, there are a couple of things I want to raise. One point that came across was this idea about, is it both and coming together or either or? And when you think about this, more things need to come together, both and, where they seemingly seem in conflict, but are not. There was a lot of discussion about, have we been too focused on efficiency to not have enough resilience? And you need to have both together. Do you need to have a lot of rules and policies, or do you need to be more adaptive? Or is it a combination of the 2? Should you be thinking about yourself or about the broader community? Is it about emotional intelligence in terms of how you relate with other people, how you empathize, how you convey your feelings? Or is it about actual intelligence, having an expertise? And again, we're seeing in our leaders, it needs to be both. It's also about your mindset. Is your mindset fixed in terms of what I know today is all I ever need to know? That in a fixed mindset, the pie is fixed. So if I get a bigger piece of the pie, you get a smaller piece of the pie. Or do you have a growth mindset where you're continually learning more and more? Whether you see possibilities, not just here is the pie, but how do I make the pie bigger so that everyone has a bigger piece? So it's thinking about into the future. And that's the other type of mindset, is kind of a future mindset, an anticipatory mindset, where you're not just focused in the here and now, but you're focused on what's going to happen over the longer term. And those types of attitudes are really important. The third thing is about complexity. Most of us don't really like dealing with complexity. And complex is different than complicated. So if we think about, if I punch my hand, I'm going to feel it in my hand. That's simple. Complicated would be turning the key on my car. There's a lot of stuff that happens. The lights go on, the motor starts, I put my foot on the gas, things start happening. And that's predictable. You know that if you turn the key, put your foot on the gas, the car's going to go. Now, what we're dealing with now, and in a lot of our businesses, and a lot of our organizations, is complexity. Complexity is unpredictable. It has innumerous interrelated parts. It's like an ecosystem, where if you think about the pandemic, what I do impacts the rest of the community, as does what my neighbors do, and what other people do, or what happens in the store. So there's all this uncertainty. There's not one answer. It's a collection of solutions that have to work together to solve a problem. And it's not even really solve the problem, it's about increasing your odds of solving the problem. So I want to wrap up for today. And I want to talk about, one, learning is good. And I've learned a lot this week. And hopefully you're learning as well. Two, we've talked about seeing differently. So how do we take that information and how do we think differently about it? And this is something I'd like you to try today. Pick a situation that you're currently facing or have faced before and say, what could I have seen differently? What could I see differently? What perspectives could I look to? And tomorrow, we're going to pick up on the third piece, which is do differently. And we'll talk about how that applies to you in your business, you in your life, you in your organization. So until tomorrow, stay safe, be well.